I want you to do something for a second. Pull out your smartphone.
Yeah, just take a look at the screen.
Right, look at the screen. Look at all those colorful little squares. Because, every single app icon you see on that screen represents this hidden, incredibly complex and just ruthlessly lucrative web of players.
It really is. I mean,
Yeah.
to you, it's just a game you play on the subway, right? Or like
Yeah.
a tool you use to track your budget.
Exactly. But behind that glass, it is an absolute battlefield. We're talking unit economics, attribution logic, cutthroat margins. And today, we are tearing down the facade of the App Store. We are going to reveal the raw, unvarnished mechanics of the mobile app ecosystem.
It's such a fascinating space, primarily because its true nature is, well, it's entirely invisible to the end user.
Yeah, completely hidden.
Right. The seamlessness of downloading an application, it completely masks this intense, high-speed economic machinery operating in the background. Like, we're looking at a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure here.
Multi-billion. And every tap, every scroll, every millisecond of human attention is quantified, right? It's packaged and monetized in real time.
Exactly, in real time.
So our mission for this deep dive is to give you a genuine masterclass on how this machinery actually operates. We're unpacking a foundational, true insider's perspective today.
Yeah, and we're drawing from this phenomenal breakdown by Longfan. It's called UA Insider #01 What is Mobile App Ecosystem? Who is Making Money?
Which is such a great title. And look, we are skipping the basic 101 definitions today. If you're listening to this deep dive, you already know what an app is.
Yeah, we don't need to explain what a smartphone does.
Right. What we are going to do is break down the exact flow of capital. We're talking developers, publishers, ad networks, MMPs, platforms, and of course, users.
And I think, more importantly, we're going to have a very serious, mathematically grounded debate about who is actually getting rich in this ecosystem.
Oh, yeah. And who is taking on all the catastrophic risk? Because someone is holding the bag.
Always. I mean, it is the most critical discussion you can have in tech right now.
100%.
Because once you understand the architecture of this specific space, you stop seeing just apps. You start seeing the flow of capital, the strategic allocation of risk, and really the entrenched positioning of these massive tech oligopolies.
Right. It changes how you look at your phone. We need to dissect not just what these players do, but the underlying mechanisms of why their incentives are structured the way they are.
Yeah, and how that structure basically dictates the survival of every company involved.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before we track the billions of dollars flowing through the system, we have to establish the board. And the gravitational center of this entire universe is the user.
Yeah, you, me, the person actually holding the device.
Exactly. Longfan's breakdown anchors everything around the user, which, it sounds obvious, but the mechanics behind why the user is the center are just staggering. We aren't just talking about download numbers here.
Not at all. I mean, a download is merely the initiation sequence. The entire ecosystem is engineered around extracting two things, basically: user attention and user wallet share.
Right. Attention and money.
Yeah. The foundational premise is that more active users equate to more monetization opportunities. And that simple idea dictates the behavior, the algorithms, the capital expenditure of every single corporation in this space.
Because a user isn't just a tally mark on a spreadsheet.
No, they are a continuous data stream. They're a predictive revenue event. The goal isn't just acquisition, right? It's maximizing lifetime value, or LTV.
LTV, yeah, that's the magic metric.
Exactly. If you cannot extract a higher LTV from a user than the cost it took to acquire them, the or customer acquisition cost, the math just breaks.
Right.
And the company dies.
Right, because if I click on a highly optimized ad, right, I download an app, I open it exactly once, and then I just ignore it for 6 months on my home screen. I'm a massive net loss for whoever paid to put that ad in front of me.
A huge loss.
Like, I cost them $3 to acquire, and I generated 0 fractions of a cent in ad revenue.
Exactly. You are burning their money.
Which brings us directly to this tension at the heart of creation here. The dynamic between the developer and the publisher. Now, we know the developer builds the product and the publisher brings it to market. But at scale, the friction between these two functions is intense, isn't it?
Well, the friction is almost baked into the corporate DNA.
Okay.
I mean, think about it. The developer, whether that's an internal engineering team or some outsourced studio, they are entirely focused on product purity.
Right, making a good app.
Yeah. They are looking at crash rates, server latency, the intuitive flow of the UI, the core engagement loop. Their metric of success is this frictionless, aesthetically perfect user experience.
But as we know, a flawless application just sitting unnoticed on an AWS server somewhere generates zero revenue.
Zero. Nobody cares if it's perfect if nobody sees it.
It's like the music industry, right? It's like the developer is the band. They're writing the songs in the garage, obsessing over the guitar tone, and the publisher is the record label. They're the ones getting the song on the radio and actually selling the concert tickets.
That is a perfect analogy because the publisher steps in and they are looking at a completely different dashboard than the band in the garage.
Yeah, they don't care about the guitar tone.
Right. The publisher doesn't care about the elegance of the code base. They care about the unit economics. They are the ones who have to figure out how to bridge the gap between building something cool and actually keeping the lights on.
Which means they dictate the monetization model.
Exactly. And choosing a monetization model isn't just some switch you flip in the App Store settings, right? It fundamentally rewrites the entire architecture of the app.
How so? Like, break that down for us.
Well, the monetization strategy is the product strategy. Let's say the publisher looks at the market and decides, okay, this app needs to be ad-supported. The developer suddenly has to re-architect the user interface. They have to accommodate banner ads, interstitial video breaks, maybe rewarded video placements, and they have to do all that without degrading the user experience to the point where people just churn and uninstall.
Right. Or, alternatively, if the publisher opts for a freemium model with in-app purchases like IAPs.
Yeah, IAPs. If they go that route, the developer has to build this psychological progression system, something that incentivizes spending without making the application feel, exploitative.
Which is a brutal balancing act.
It really is, because
yeah.
the publisher is constantly running the calculus. Like, how do we extract the maximum LTV to offset our customer acquisition costs?
And if you push too hard on monetization, the user churns, your LTV drops, and suddenly you can't afford to buy new users.
Exactly.
But if you don't push hard enough, the user loves the app, sure, but your LTV is too low to sustain the ad spend, and you just bleed out slowly.
It's a lose-lose if you don't get the balance perfectly right.
But here is the crazy thing. Neither the developer with their perfect code, nor the publisher with their aggressive LTV models can do absolutely anything without the gatekeepers.
Ah, the gatekeeper.
Yeah, they need the venue. And in this ecosystem, the venues are the platforms, Google Play and the Apple App Store.
And honestly, to call them gatekeepers is almost an understatement. They operate much more like sovereign states.
Sovereign states, I like that.
I mean, these two platforms are the most powerful marketplaces in the global digital economy. They wield absolute, unmitigated authority over everyone else.
They really do. They control the compliance, the censorship of the applications. They control the physical distribution to the actual devices in your hand.
And most importantly, they control the payment infrastructure. That's the big one.
Yeah. Longfan's analysis uses a phrase that is honestly chilling in its accuracy. The breakdown says, quote, so when they call, the app has to listen.
Has to listen.
Yeah.
It's absolute subjugation.
Like, imagine a publisher spends $50 million developing and marketing an application. They achieve massive scale. And then Apple or Google decides an update violates some newly written subclause in their developer guidelines.
That business is effectively erased from existence overnight. Poof. Gone.
Overnight. Because there is no alternative distribution channel that matters at that scale.
None. And that absolute leverage allows them to enact a form of, well, basically sovereign taxation. Because they own the distribution pipes and the payment processing, they extract a massive toll.
The breakdown points out they take a not-so-small percentage.
Yeah, which is, putting it mildly, as anyone in the industry knows, it is historically a 30% commission on every single transaction.
30%. Every paid download, every in-app purchase, every subscription renewal, Apple or Google gets a third.
Think about the economic implications of that for a second. Like, standard UTL margins in the physical world are razor thin, right? Often in the single digits.
Yeah, supermarkets survive on like 2% margins.
It's exactly. But Apple and Google are skimming 30% off the top line of an entire global industry simply for providing the digital real estate.
It's the ultimate rent-seeking behavior. Because they don't take on the risk of prototyping the app. They don't take on the crushing financial risk of marketing it. But if the app succeeds, they are guaranteed a third of the revenue. It's staggering.
It's an incredible business model if you can get away with it.
Right. But let's look at how the users actually arrive at these toll booths.
Yeah.
Because nobody just organically scrolls through a store with 5 million applications and magically finds yours.
No, the era of organic discovery is dead and buried, long gone.
Completely dead. Which is where we transition from the creators and gatekeepers to the absolute engines of the ecosystem, the middlemen.
The middlemen.
Yeah. First up, we've got the ad networks.
Right. So if the platforms are the sovereign states, the ad networks are the high-speed financial exchanges of human attention.
That's a great way to put it.
They are the essential intermediaries. They connect the supply side, meaning publishers who have empty digital real estate within their apps, with the demand side, the advertisers who need to buy that space to acquire users.
So the ad network sits perfectly in the middle.
Exactly. Operating these vast, algorithmic auction houses that execute billions of transactions a second.
And Longfam breaks this down into two distinct flavors, which I think is crucial for understanding how the traffic actually flows. You have the networks providing massive raw traffic.
The apex predators.
Right, the apex predators like Google Ads, Meta, TikTok. You are essentially paying them to interrupt a user's native feed and drag them kipping and screaming to the App Store.
Yep.
But then you have the in-app advertising networks.
Right, like AdMob or Unity Ads, AppLovin.
Exactly. And they serve ads inside other publishers' games or utility apps. So you're playing a puzzle game and you see an ad for a strategy game. That's an in-app network.
And the mechanics of how these networks match supply and demand, that is what drives the entire economy. It revolves entirely around eCPM.
eCPM. Okay, for the folks listening who might be a bit fuzzy on the math, break down eCPM.
Sure. It stands for effective cost per mil, basically the cost per thousand impressions. This is the universal translator of the app ecosystem.
Right.
The ad network's algorithm is constantly evaluating a user's profile. It's predicting their likelihood to click an ad and install a specific app, and it's running an instantaneous auction among thousands of advertisers who are all bidding for that exact user's eyeballs.
In real time.
In milliseconds.
Yeah.
And the advertiser willing to pay the highest eCPM wins the impression. The ad network takes their cut of the transaction, and the publisher showing the ad gets the remainder.
So it's essentially high-frequency algorithmic trading, but the commodity isn't stocks. It's a teenager's attention span between TikTok videos.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
But here's the massive mechanical problem that completely broke my brain when I first looked at this industry years ago. Let's say I'm a publisher, okay?
Okay.
I'm spending $100,000 a day on Meta. I'm spending $50,000 on Google and $20,000 on Unity ads.
A decent daily spend.
Right. So a user clicks an ad, they go to the App Store, and they download my app. How on earth do I definitively know which network gets the credit for that install?
That is the million-dollar question.
Because if I ask Meta, they'll say they did it. If I ask Google, they'll point to their view-through attribution model and say, no, we proved we did it.
Of course they will. Everyone wants to claim the win, so you keep spending with them.
Right. This is where the whole system absolutely requires an auditor. And that brings us to the MMPs.
The mobile measurement partners.
Exactly. AppsFlyer, Adjust, Singular. If the ad networks are the salespeople bringing people in the door, are the MMPs basically the auditors, like the independent accountants checking the receipts?
That's a brilliant way to frame it.
Yeah.
The MMPs are arguably the most structurally vital, yet least understood players by the general public.
Completely invisible to the user.
Totally invisible. Their singular critical function is attribution. They are the objective referees in a game where, quite frankly, every single player is financially incentivized to cheat.
Wow. Incentivized to cheat.
Well, think about it. Without an MMP, a publisher is spending millions of dollars in a black box. They know cash is leaving their bank account, and they know downloads are happening on the App Store, but establishing a causal mathematical link between the two, it's impossible.
Exactly. Because an ad network grading its own homework is just a recipe for catastrophic financial bleed.
100%.
The ad network is going to claim every organic install they can vaguely associate with an ad impression. Oh, you saw our ad 3 weeks ago and downloaded the app today. We did that. Pay us.
Right. And so the MMP's job is to sit in the middle. They catch the data payload when the user clicks the ad. Then they catch the data payload when the user opens the app for the first time.
Okay.
And then they perform this definitive, deterministic, or probabilistic matching to say, yes, this exact user on this exact device came from campaign B on TikTok, and it cost you $2.50.
And that validation is the absolute bedrock of user acquisition.
It is a foundation. Because in digital performance marketing, you are not paying for the effort of showing an ad. You are paying for the validated outcome of an install or a purchase. And the MMPs track that entire life cycle. They don't just stop at the install either.
Right, they track everything that happens after.
Exactly. The downstream events, the registration, the tutorial completion, the exact point at which the user drops $100 on virtual currency, they track all of it.
And then they feed that post-install data back to the ad networks, right?
Yeah, so the networks can train their algorithms to find more high-value users, and simultaneously, they provide the publisher with the raw data necessary to calculate their true ROAS.
ROAS, return on ad spend.
Your return on ad spend, exactly.
The breakdown uses the phrase flying blind. And it's so true. If you don't have an MMP, you are flying blind into a mountain.
You're going to crash.
You cannot optimize your bids, you cannot kill failing campaigns, and you cannot scale winning ones. You are literally just throwing cash into a furnace and hoping a product comes out.
It's financial suicide.
Which pivots us directly into the core visceral debate of this deep dive. Because we've set the board now. We know exactly what everyone does.
The players are on the field.
Right. Now, we follow the actual cash flow. We have to confront the harsh economic reality of who is securing guaranteed revenue versus who is absorbing all the catastrophic risk.
And the asymmetry of risk in this ecosystem is profound. It's really wild.
Let's start with the creators then, the developers and publishers.
Okay, so they are the ones actually building the intrinsic value of the ecosystem, right? They make the things people want to use.
Yeah.
But whether their revenue model is based on displaying ads, facilitating in-app purchases, or driving subscriptions, the analysis highlights a deeply grim reality. The failure rate is staggering.
It really is. The rate at which apps make money is usually not high. That's what the source says.
The percentage of apps that actually achieve sustained profitability is incredibly low.
It's wildly disproportionate to the public perception because everyone sees the headlines about, the game studio that sold for $3 billion.
Right, the unicorn success stories.
Exactly. But they don't see the graveyard of tens of thousands of studios that went bankrupt trying to get there.
Yeah.
And why is the failure rate so high? It's not because the code is bad.
No, it's rarely the code. It's because they bear 100% of the market risk.
100%.
Building a functional application is merely the baseline entry fee. Their entire business model is completely subservient to the brutal mathematics of user acquisition.
Because they have to front massive amounts of working capital just to buy users through the ad networks, right?
Exactly. Operating on this precarious assumption that their LTV models are accurate, if the LTV drops because users get bored of the core loop.
Or if the case spikes because a competitor starts aggressively bidding up the ad auctions.
Right. If either of those things happen, the developer's margins just evaporate. They're the only players in the ecosystem who can do their jobs perfectly, build a flawless app, and still go bankrupt if the user behavior shifts by a few percentage points.
They are out on the bleeding edge, they take all the risk, but then you look at the infrastructure layer.
The middleman and the gatekeepers.
The guaranteed winners. Let's look at the platforms again. Apple and Google. They own the toll road. It does not matter to them if your studio spent 5 years and $50 million developing an RPG that is currently operating at a negative 20% margin.
They don't care about your margins.
Not at all. If a user spends $10 in your game, the platform takes $3 immediately, risk-free.
In economic terms, it is flawless rent extraction.
Flawless.
I mean, once the capital expenditure of building the App Store infrastructure was completed, their marginal cost of distributing a new app became effectively zero.
Right. It costs them nothing to host your app, really.
Yet their revenue scales linearly with the success of every single developer on the planet. Their risk profile, relative to the sheer volume of capital they extract, is practically non-existent.
And the ad networks, the analysis is very blunt here. It says, quote, people definitely make money, or referring to the ad networks.
They definitely make money.
Because they are insulated from the success or failure of the product itself. They live on the sheer volume of transactions. They literally feed on the desperation of the UA marketers.
Yeah, they really do. As the app ecosystem becomes more saturated and developers are fighting tooth and nail for this shrinking pool of high-intent users, the auction bids go up.
Right. The cost per install rises.
Exactly. The ad networks don't just facilitate the market. They capture the inflation of the market. Meta and Google do not care if your e-commerce app has a broken checkout flow and you are failing to monetize the users they send you.
Right. They don't care if you're losing money.
You bid for the impression, they delivered the click, you owe them the money. Their revenue is dictated by the density of competition among publishers, not the viability of the publisher's underlying business models.
I've said this before, but it's a gold rush, and they are selling the shovels.
Yes.
Oh, wait, what about the MMPs, the auditors we talked about? How do they extract their pound of flesh?
Well, the breakdown notes that MMPs collect money steadily.
Steadily? Because they operate almost exclusively on enterprise SaaS models or volume-based pricing tiers. They charge fractions of a cent for every install they attribute or every data point they process.
Okay, so let me get this straight. Consider this scenario. A publisher launches a disastrous UA campaign.
Okay.
They spend $1 million. They acquire low-quality users who immediately delete the app, and the studio faces insolvency. They're going bankrupt.
A very common scenario, sadly.
In that exact same scenario, the MMP successfully recorded the data, attributed the failed installs, and billed the publisher for their services.
Yep.
The MMP got paid.
The MMP always gets paid.
The structural dynamic here is just mind-blowing. Here's where it gets really interesting. It's the gold rush. The developers are the miners. They're freezing in the river, risking their lives for a nugget of gold.
Right.
The platforms, they own the river, and they take a third of everything found.
The ad networks are sitting on the bank selling the pickaxes at premium markups. And the MMPs, they are charging a mandatory fee just to use the scale to weigh the gold. The guys selling the shovels and owning the land never lose.
That analogy perfectly encapsulates the systemic reality of this industry.
Yeah.
The entities providing the picks, the shovels, and the infrastructure have engineered businesses with highly predictable, massive, recurring revenue streams.
They just sit back and collect.
They are almost entirely insulated from the hit-driven, incredibly volatile nature of app publishing. Which, it inevitably forces us to look at the exact point where all this pressure converges.
Right.
If the developers hold all the risk and the middle end take all the margin, who is the person actually tasked with navigating this minefield to ensure the studio doesn't collapse?
And that brings us to the linchpin of the entire mobile economy, the user acquisition marketer, the UA marketer.
The person in the hot seat.
They don't write a single line of code. They don't design the characters in the game. They don't build the ad networks. But Longfan's analysis designates them as the absolute key to revenue.
It is a profound and entirely accurate assessment. The UA marketer is the engine room. They are the individuals entrusted with the working capital of the studio.
They hold the purse strings.
Yeah. Their job is to dive into those high-speed algorithmic auctions we talked about, negotiate the eCPM, analyze the attribution data from the MMPs, and somehow, against all the rent-seeking mechanics we just discussed, extract users whose lifetime value exceeds the acquisition cost.
They hold the survival of the company in their hands. I mean, the pressure must be physically debilitating.
It's immense. Because if a UA team is executing flawlessly, if they're isolating highly profitable user cohorts, if they're optimizing creative assets to lower the CAC and scaling budgets efficiently, the entire ecosystem hums.
Right. If UA is working, everyone's happy.
The developer pays their engineers, the ad networks post record quarterly profits, the platforms collect their 30% tax. Everyone eats well.
But the margin for error is razor thin, isn't it?
It's practically non-existent. If the UA strategy falters, if they misinterpret the data, or if, say, an algorithm change at Meta suddenly doubles their acquisition costs, the fallout is immediate.
The analysis states that a failing app, quote, burns money and only lives on trust.
Lives on trust.
Yeah. That phrase, living on trust, is a very polite way of describing a mathematically doomed enterprise, isn't it?
It really is. It's a euphemism for bleeding out.
Oh, let's dissect that. As senior managers, what does living on trust actually look like on a spreadsheet?
It means operating with a profoundly negative return on ad spend. It means a studio is pouring hundreds of thousands of dollars into Google and TikTok, acquiring users, and realizing by day 7 or day 30 that those users will never, ever generate enough revenue to cover the initial ad spend.
So they're just losing money every day.
Every single day. To survive in that state, they rely on external subsidies, venture capital injections, bank loans, or maybe they're cannibalizing the profits from an older legacy application.
Just to keep the lights on.
Right. And all of this is based on the trust or hope that the UA team will eventually optimize the funnel. They are buying time. But if the LTV and CAC curves do not eventually cross, the math is inescapable. The studio will be liquidated.
You are literally setting venture capital on fire, hoping it generates enough steam to start the engine before you run out of fuel.
That's exactly it.
It is a terrifying high-wire act. So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? Whether you are a product manager, an indie developer, an investor, or just someone trying to understand why your free weather app serves you 3 unskippable video ads a day.
It means you have to fundamentally shift your perspective. An application is not a standalone piece of software. It is a node deeply embedded in a hostile, highly optimized financial network.
A hostile network.
Building a great product is necessary, obviously, but it is entirely insufficient for survival. You must master the mechanics of the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's crystallize this into 3 actionable, hard-hitting takeaways that you need to internalize from this breakdown. Number 1, you must identify your exact position in the flow of capital. Are you the one paying the toll, or are you the one collecting it?
Right. If you are a developer or a publisher, you have to acknowledge that you reside at the absolute bottom of the risk funnel.
The very bottom.
Every single infrastructure player, the platforms, the networks, the MMPs, extracts their margin before you recognize a single cent of profit. You cannot build a business model on vague assumptions.
Yeah.
You must deeply understand the LTV to CAC ratios required to feed this entire ecosystem and still retain a margin for your own survival.
And on the flip side,
Conversely, if you are building B2B tools or services, understand that you are in the picks and shovels business. Your risk is lower, but your reliance on aggregate industry volume is absolute.
makes sense. Okay, takeaway number 2. MMPs are strictly non-negotiable. Do not even attempt to navigate this space without one. Seriously. Attempting to run user acquisition at scale without robust, independent attribution is corporate malpractice. You must integrate an MMP, like AppsFlyer, Adjust, or Singular.
You need that auditor.
You need a definitive, objective source of truth to validate your ad spend, track your post-install events, and calculate your ROAS. The ad networks will not protect your margins. Their incentive is to maximize their own yield.
Right. They want your money.
Exactly. The cost of integrating an MMP is a microscopic fraction of the capital you'll hemorrhage to fraud, misattribution, and inefficient ad bidding if you try to fly blind.
Okay, and takeaway number 3, which honestly might be the most important for anyone actually building consumer tech. Treat UA as the core engine of your business, not an afterthought you bolt on at launch.
Because the entire survival of the publisher rests on unit economics, marketing cannot be relegated to a post-production silo. User acquisition must be integrated into the product development lifecycle from inception.
From day one. Day one. You have to design the application's core loops, its monetization triggers, and its aesthetic appeal specifically to be marketable in high-speed ad auctions.
Right. A product that is cheap to build but expensive to market will fail.
100%. A product must be engineered to lower its own CAC and maximize its own LTV.
You cannot just build a beautiful app, put it in the store, and pray the algorithm finds you. You have to architect the code knowing exactly how much it will cost to drag a user kicking and screaming through the funnel.
It's a harsh reality, but it's the truth.
This deep dive has completely recontextualized how I view the digital economy. We spent this entire time dissecting the absolute unyielding dominance of Apple and Google as the toll collectors of this multi-billion-dollar highway. They hold ultimate power and they take zero risks.
Zero risk.
But I want to leave you with this to chew on. If the developers are taking all of the crushing financial risk and the platforms are extracting a massive guaranteed 30% toll just for providing the payment pipes, what happens to this incredibly delicate ecosystem if a new, frictionless, decentralized distribution platform emerges that bypasses the duopoly entirely?
Oh, that's a dream, isn't it?
If the developers suddenly don't have to pay the 30% tax, who loses their leverage first? The platforms, the ad networks, or does all that freed up capital just result in a massive spike in user acquisition costs? Think about the underlying economics next time you casually tap an app icon.